If I ask any of you listening, who would you rather think would be a more open-minded and perceptive individual on a general level of issues? An academic 10-year history professor or a military veteran? To many of you, the answer is probably clear-cut decision. You'd probably choose the professor. But a fair amount of you would also probably choose the military service as a key to open-mindedness, no question. I wanted to welcome everybody to War for Open-Mindedness and Perception. We're here to talk about whether you see someone with a higher education or somebody that has served in the military to be more open-minded and more perceptive. Today, we're lucky enough to have special guest Diana Moreno, an active student representing the side of higher education, and Christian Dizon, who is actually an Army military veteran, and he's representing the side of the military. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Consider myself privileged to have you guys here. Now, let's just jump right in. Let's talk about why higher education, Diana, makes somebody more open-minded and perceptive.
Well, thank you, Aaron. That's a great question. As an active student, like you mentioned, this culture of higher education really provides the student an opportunity to make mistakes, right? When you get into the work field or even in the military, making mistakes, it can be life or death at that point. With our culture, we have that opportunity within like the 2 to 4 or 7 years, depending on how much you want to learn or get a degree on. You can navigate it by learning from your mistakes. And that's really the culture that we're in. We're learning ideologies, methodologies, theories on different cultures, on different backgrounds that can help us have an open mind. For instance, let me give you a precise example. Currently, I am learning about transgender identity, biology, what these people, even parents that have children, are living with. Now, as a student learning from that, that's providing me the opportunity to, one, question myself, reflect what I know just from my own experiences and what I don't know. And so that it kind of forces me, this culture of higher ed forces me to look at a different perspective, a different experience from my own experience, and how I can even navigate when I am in a situation, or let's say I'm in a professional situation with someone who's experienced transgenderism. You know what I mean? I have applied the learning aspects of what language to use, versus he, she, the binary language, towards better open-mindedness of they, them, etc. And that's just an example that I can give you of how this culture of higher education has given and provided the opportunity to really get to know yourself, your core values, your strengths, your weaknesses. And so that's my own perspective and opinion. Thank you, Aaron.
No, it's a very informed opinion. When it comes down to it, higher education does give you multiple perspectives. And that's very interesting to hear about your side of this culture. Christian, please talk to me. A lot of people don't know about this side of the military. It's just something completely unknown to them. So just try to enlighten us on why you think the military service makes you more enlightened and perceptive.
All right. Well, again, Aaron, thank you for having me here and giving me the opportunity to provide a little insight about the military. So the military teaches you to see the world differently, in a way where you consider the important factors in any matter rather than just focusing on just one information that you don't even know if it's accurate. So you learn to understand that many people may not share the same idea as you do, and that at the same time analyze the reasons behind their conclusions. Understanding other people's perspective and seeing the entire picture of the story is vital when it comes to making decisions, and we all know that. So we need to understand the entirety of any situation so we can calculate and construct a proper reaction for it. In the military, it also doesn't matter what color you are. You can be white, black, brown, yellow, pink, or whatever, but none of that matters. In the eyes of any soldier who's been in the service long enough, it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, how old you are, how poor or rich you are. In the army, you are all equal. With this type of mentality, brotherhoods and sisterhoods are created. As a former civilian, I know how civilians think. So let me just give you a little perspective of what I think about being a civilian. So as a civilian, we were taught growing up that all people are different, so we have to treat them all differently. But in military, you will learn and live to treat everyone like how you treat your old brothers and sisters. In the military, you will learn the importance of discipline. You will be proficient in maintaining your composure while under stress or chaos, which ultimately helps you not react based off your emotions and give you time to analyze and understand the situation before reacting. With that, you'll also learn how to respect other people's ideas, points of views, and their rights to their own opinion. By respecting other people's opinion, even if they are against our own personal belief, we are able to avoid unnecessary conflicts or arguments. It doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. What's important is that in the end of the day, we can still get along and drink a cold one together, all because we respect each other's differences. And that's all I have for that, Aaron. Thank you.
Well, that's ultimately a big deciding factor between a lot of us. I mean, you see open-mindedness, you see, can I go to a person who I have almost nothing in common with, someone who clearly has a different opinion than I do, and have a conversation that can just feel civil, that you're not, it's not a, I prepared this, I'm going to say it, you prepared this, I'm going to say it, and then we're just not going to have it, we're just going to butt heads. You're willing to listen to each other. So it's an interesting point that you had made up that you, Christian, I'm going to open this up to a more fluid dialogue, that the military, you are, it doesn't matter who you are, if you're black, white, you're Hispanic, anything on the rainbow, you are a team and you work together. But some would say that not identifying cultural differences is kind of a little naive. And it's kind of puts aside of the factor historical differences that have created separation between different races in the past. I'd be curious, Diana, what you think. How do you believe that history plays, the historical backgrounds between races and between different groups of people will create more understanding?
Well, I think that with higher education, it depends on what courses you take. Not everyone is going to take a relationship course or a communicative course that can help navigate how to critically problem solve. But I think in general, higher education does teach us, regardless of what subject you take, how to critically navigate that situation. But I do agree with Christian when he's mentioned that maintaining composure under stress and chaos, I think they're more trained than a student is. But I think also students, like I mentioned before, my first point of view, that when you make mistakes, like let's say I do create a mistake by associating with myself with a culture that I didn't necessarily I might have offended. You know, in higher education, people are going to tell you academically how to properly communicate and use proper language to address such cultures or how to address certain diversity. I mean, many academic systems really pride in that system of diversity and inclusion. And so I think that's a huge topic that higher ed really tries their best to have, whether it be in clubs, whether it be in workshops, whether it be in training for the professors, and then they bring it into the students and into the classes and into their assignments. I think that's one way that as students, we are learning how to become more inclusive and more diverse when we might have come from a solid background.
Here's the thing, and it makes sense. And in practice, clubs such like this would create more acceptance. But again, this is school. This isn't necessarily your professional life. You graduate, you might not ever see these people again, and you enter society in real societal ways. So in a sense, they're not necessarily practiced. I mean, you can study all you want, but you don't know if that's going to work in the professional world.
Well,
I'd
I
be
mean,
very curious to see Christian's perspective on how you feel, Christian, that maybe the military is a different aspect to that.
Well, thanks again, Aaron. I agree with what you said. History is really important, especially when it comes to different cultures and stuff. We learn history even from high school. We learn history and stuff. So we learn other people's cultures and what they've been through. So once they join the military, everything becomes different. It's like creating your own culture, the same culture where a diverse group of people just come together and create one whole family. So in terms of that, we all know, let's be honest, we all know we are different and we all have stereotypes, right? So in the military, you gotta be creative because there's a lot of times when you're gonna be depressed, you're gonna be down and stuff.
Would you say it's not too ridiculous to say there's still conflict, cultural
Yes,
conflict in the military?
yes, that is true. There is conflict in the military. There's cultural conflict in the military. But then again, we also know how to make take those conflicts and turn them into a positive thing for us. Let's say, for example, we all have stereotypes. We can make those stereotypes and use them as jokes to boost morale for people. I mean, it doesn't really offend us because we all know that we respect each other. It doesn't mean because we're calling out people based on their stereotypes doesn't mean we're actually discriminating them or against them. We're just using them as jokes to boost morale for people. And
That's all it makes. But when you're in the military, I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but it's a different mentality when you're in the military and active duty with your fellow people in the military, whereas when you come back to civilian life.
it is very different actually. So in the military,
Yeah.
we take everything as jokes and nobody gets offended. But once you get back to the civilian section or civilian life, you actually have to watch what you're saying because people are not the same as you. They have different culture. They get offended easily. You just never know if whatever you say or whatever you used to say in the military will offend them. So which is why I think it's important to you take a pause, take a deep breath, and think if whatever you're gonna say is gonna affect the person you're talking to. How is that person gonna be affected? Is it gonna offend him or not? And that's why it's important to actually have that discipline to control whatever you say, or actually just think before you say something.
Aaron,
Diane,
can
I
I
want
say
to bring
something?
up to that. Oh, sorry, what were you going to say, Diane?
Oh, well, yeah, go ahead, ask me the question and then I'll.
Christian talks about discipline. It's something that they emphasize in the military, that you get discipline in the military. But obviously, academic discipline, the ability to get your grades done, doing a great job, that's all discipline as well. How could you see that the discipline in academics could do around the same amount of work and work just the same?
Right. One of the distinctions that I just want to bring up is that the discipline, it takes a while, but you must find a way to be organized, because if you're not organized, you're going to be all over the place. You're going to miss deadlines. You're going to miss appointments. And guess what? That's not going to provide you the opportunity. If you look and do research on any kind of person that has ever been successful in anything, they are very disciplined. They have a set schedule. They're very organized. And let me tell you, it took me a few years to become disciplined, but once I handled the ups and downs of life and how to navigate it, it's helped me tremendously. Now, I also want to say that with higher education, I feel like just what Christian said, you're still getting the critical aspect of how to critically think. You mentioned that people get offended, but I think also we're learning as students how to be appropriate. We are learning how to become professionals. What does that mean? It means to be open-minded. It means to listen to others. It means to learn how to navigate challenges. All of these things as students we are learning. And like I mentioned, how do we put it into action is through the mistakes that we make. How do we learn? This is always going to be a lifelong lesson for everyone involved, no matter what degree, what status you're in. If you don't make mistakes, how do you have the opportunity to reflect and make it better? There's no such thing as perfection. I mean, even in the military, people make mistakes. At the end of the day, I'm a person that this is a choice. I'm not knocking down military. I think military has its pros and its cons. One con that I do see though for myself personally is that, listen, I wouldn't be able to go to combat, see literally death, and then come back and then live a normal life. I just couldn't. And some people are
But that's
trained.
what we need. I want to make sure, and I want to hear it. I want to hear what you're going to say. We got to make sure that Christian is talking about this combat side. It's something Christian, and Diana brings it up, and it's one of the biggest things of this discussion is that going over to going on the military and going over and becoming in a war zone. People say post-traumatic stress disorder. When you come back, you're not able to function properly in civilian life, and it's a very real thing out there, and people don't take it seriously enough. But I wanted to get your opinion on what Diana is saying, is that she couldn't do it. But now that you're back, do you feel as if you've been able to empower yourself and being able to function?
Oh, that's a good question, Aaron. Let me just clarify one thing about that. For some reason, we are under the assumption that if you join the military, you automatically gonna go to combat. That's not true at all. So in the military, there's 4 branches in the military. You have the Army, the Air Force, Marines, and Navy. There are hundreds of jobs in those branches where you don't have to go to combat at all. Well, there are logisticals or other types of jobs in the military that you can join in. And at the same time, you get the same training that everybody gets. You get the discipline, learn how to respect people, and all those other good stuff. So in terms of going to a combat zone and coming back, people are all different. There are people who go to combat and get traumatized. There are also people who are just not able to come back normal. And like me, I've been in combat and I've seen a lot of things, but I can still control myself, my emotions. It's probably because I am disciplined enough to actually have control over my life and all those things. And others are just not fortunate enough to have the same discipline as I do. So it all really comes down to who's the person is. It's his personality and the way he thinks, the way he controls his life.
But that experience will still make an impact. Would you say your general conversations with say you're walking down the street and you strike a conversation with an individual, a civilian, and they have a completely opposite opinion of you. Would you say that your military service has regularly changed your perspective on your thoughts? Or would you say that in general it doesn't affect you as much?
Well, I would say the military has changed my perspective of thoughts. If they say something that's different from my own perspective, that's fine. That's their own belief. Doesn't affect me at all. Would it kill me? No. So why would it even matter?
I have a question too.
Oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Aaron, I'm sorry. I just wanted to also mention that, and Christian, you bring a good point. You're right. A lot of civilians don't know much about the military, especially when you don't have an interest of it. So I really learned a lot from just your conversation and your perspective. One, living through it, and then also coming out of it. Now, I was going to mention, based on that, don't the military also assess the people, psychologically, if they're, to make sure that if they were to go to combat, if they were going to be able to handle it? Is there some kind of pre-assessment before you guys can go forward into this kind of circumstance?
Yes, that's a good question. So here's the process. When you sign up for a military, there's this place they take you. It's called MEPS, Military Entry Processing Station. So they take you there, take your medical, see if you're physically fit and mentally stable. After that, they ship you off to boot camp and do all your trainings and all the good stuff. After boot camp, you get stationed to a different place where you're going to be with your unit and just train with them for a long time before you deploy. Before deployment to a combat zone or anywhere in general, they analyze you again. They test you for physical, mental, and all those things. And after serving in combat zone, when you come back to the States, they test you again to see if you're still good, if you're still physically fit and mentally stable. So
yeah, but the general, that's I think what we need to talk about. Is it physically fit? Like, where's that boundary? Where's that distinction between physically fit and mentally stable? You're not just going to walk down the street and go nuts on somebody. When we're talking about open-mindedness, kind of bringing this back, would you say that the military, are they teaching you how to be more open-minded? Are they, like, in that exit consultation, are you mentally stable? Are you physically fit? But are they saying, do you have any racial biases? Do you have any judgment towards this? Like, how do you feel towards other cultures?
well, they don't directly teach you how to become open-minded, but they teach you how to become respectful and all the other spectrums of being open-minded, which ultimately will result to you becoming open-minded. And you're also forced to live an open-minded life. So that's how you get it from the military.
So it's like actually lived is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yes, you actually live it, but they don't
Yeah.
teach you directly because you can't teach that.
Which you can't teach that, which is directly while we were talking about higher education. Diana, that's a pretty compelling argument of you can't teach how to become open-minded from experiences that aren't going to immerse you.
Well, I mean, listen, Aaron, I think that's like an open-ended question because we've been discussing, it depends on the person. There's a variety of education out there that does teach about mindfulness. It's just a matter of like, are we choosing to participate in that? And some people do not. And so I think higher education and the military at this point, from what I'm learning, is that even though they're different cultures, they're very similar at the same time. And so in the end, it really does depend, doesn't it, Aaron, on the individual?
In the end, when it comes down to it, I mean, I could be wrong and maybe I'm making the wrong assumptions here, but it's all circumstantial. You can see the bits of becoming open-mindedness from being immersed in the action of the military, where you're not necessarily going to learn as much about the history like you would for higher education, but you will still find what's going on. So I have to obviously wrap this up because obviously we could go on for hours about this. But I want to say thank you so much to Diana and Christian. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And I want to say thank you again to our sponsors. Really appreciate it. For Professor Kelly, thank you again.
And Peter.
And Peter, yes, my adorable baby. And thank you again so much for listening to the War of Open-Mindedness and Perception. And we will see you all again next week, same time, same place. And thank you again for listening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.